Hi everyone, in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how you can create your own found footage in Blender. It is inspired from the game Dreamcore Demo from the creator ValenQpr. We are going to model the entire building, add a nice tile texture, some backroom lighting and finally the animation. And don't forget to check out my Ko-fi page if you want to support me by buying me a coffee or by buying a commission. So let's begin this tutorial. So let's first open our reference image, so Shift A and Image and Reference. And you can find it in the description below. And once you have it in your scene, we can press Alt and R, so we can reset the rotation. And now we can go to 7 and we can make it a bit bigger. So let's make it something about this. So let's just open a cube, Shift A and Cube. And we can go to 7 and now we can just align it to the picture. So we can make it in the middle and S and X. And we can scale it to about here. And also let's bring it more in place. And now we can scale it on the y-axis, so S and Y, to about here. And now we can adjust it a bit more, so we can go to 7 in our X-ray mode, so Alt and Z. And now we can just align this edge, so we can select our cube. And we can select this face here. And now we can just G and Y to grab it and move it to about here. And once we have that, we can select the ceiling and just delete it, so X and delete faces. So later we can add a ceiling again. And let's bring it up on the Z-axis, so G and Z. And we can also bring the other reference image, so Shift A and Image and Reference. So this one is on the side view. And we can just scale it up and we can just match it. So now we can also match it to the height, so we can bring it to about here. And now we can just go to edit mode and select these edges, so we can go to 2 or press this button here. And we can just press Alt and click this edge here, and G and Z to grab it and move it up, so to about here. And now we can also hide this reference, so we don't need it. And next we can make some subdivisions, so we can select this cube and let's go to edit mode and we can select everything and right click and subdivide. And let's subdivide it a couple of times until we have some lines here. And let's subdivide it one more time. Do something about this, I think 4 subdivisions. And let's open a cube again, so Shift A and Mesh and Cube. And let's place it above. And S and X to make it longer, and let's place it. And let's go to 7 and we can make it a bit smaller. And let's make it also thinner, so S and Shift and X, so it doesn't scale on the X-axis, so something like this. And let's move it on the Y-axis to here. And now we have to make it a bit bigger, so we can select this face here and grab it, so G and Y. So we can make it a bit wider. And let's bring back our reference image and we can go to 1 and we can see where we have to place it. So let's grab it and bring it down. So maybe do something about here. And once we have that, we can hide it again. So let's hide this. And let's bring it a bit more to the wall. So G and Y until here. And let's select a cube again. So Shift S and cursor to select it. And a cube. And G and X to move it to this wall here, and let's make it smaller and bring it up. And what we can also do to make it a bit easier, so we can select this cube and select this face, Shift S, cursor to select it. And now the cursor is on this wall here, and we can press our period key and 3D cursor. And now we can just select this cube and we can select this face and S, Y and 0. And now it is perfectly fit to this other side here. And now you can just bring it a bit more up and you can hold your Shift key so it is easier to control. And let's bring it more to this wall and also the other one, so we can select this cube again and we can go to 3, face select and select this face, Shift S and cursor to select it. So now the cursor is here and we can click our cube again and we can go to edit mode and you can also go to toggle view so you can see it better. And for that you can press the slash key on your numpad. Or you can go up here to view and local view and toggle local view. And once we have that, we can just select this face and let's go back. So with your slash key and S, Y, and 0. And now it is also perfectly fit like the other one. And now we can make it a bit higher, so let's grab it and make it higher. So maybe something like this. So now we can just make this longer, so we can select this face and G and X, so we can grab it and bring it to about here. And let's first apply the scale, so Ctrl A and scale. And now we can just select everything and right click and subdivide. And let's subdivide it a couple of times. So maybe something about this. And let's go to our toggle view by pressing slash, and we can go to face select and we can select this face and hold Ctrl and Shift and the other one and X and faces, so we don't need them. And let's go back and we can go to edit mode again and we can just select a couple of faces. So let's maybe select them here and I to inset. So something about this. And right click and loop tools and circle. And now we have a perfect circle here and we can just select the rest of the faces. So let's select all of them by pressing C and right click to remove it. And now we can just select these faces as well and X and faces. And let's go to 1. And we can also go to toggle view so we can have a better view. And what I noticed, I think it is easier if we select all of these faces and delete them. So let's go to 7 and X-ray mode by pressing Alt and Z. And now we can just box select all of them, but not the front faces. So let's just select these ones here and X and faces. And now it is much better to control. And we can select these both vertices and just extrude it. So E and Z. And you have to align it to the other ones. So, but they don't have to be perfect. So just roughly matching it. And now we can go to our edge select. And so we can select these edges here and pressing F to fill it. And then holding F until everything is filled and also the other side. And let's go back and we can select everything and E to extrude it. So let's extrude it to this wall here. And once we have that, we can add some bevel and a subdivision. So let's make a bevel modifier. And as you can see, it is too big. And let's make 2 segments and let's bring it down to something like this. 0.013 and right click and shade smooth, and now we can add a subdivision, so Ctrl 2, or you can just go up here and search a subdivision, and once we have that it looks much better. And now we can also just copy this, so we can just Shift D and G and X and we can move it to here. And now we can make a hole here in this wall, and now we can just select these faces and we can either delete them or we can just leave it. And X and faces. And now we have a entrance here. And we can go to edge select and we can also select these edges here. So let's select them and we can hide this cube here. So let's hide it. And we can just select these edges and we can move them a bit more to the side. So S and Y to just move it slightly. And now it looks much better. And what we can do next, we can just make a room here. So like here, we can just select this cube and then we can select this face and bring it to the front. So G and X. And we can go to our top view to see it better. So something like this. And next we can go to top view again and E to extrude it to about here. And now we can just select these faces and E and right click and S and Y. So we can scale it to here. So we can roughly match it. So S and Y. And now let's go to our edge select and we can select these edges here. So let's just select them here, but not this one. And E to extrude it up and Z. And now we can also fit it perfectly. So we can just select this object here and we can select the face and Shift and S and cursor to select it. And once we have that, we can go back to this object and we can just press our pivot key and change it to 3D cursor and S, Z and 0. And now it has the same height as this object. And we can just select these faces and F to fill it. So now we have a ceiling here. And now we can just select this one. And we can go to toggle view and select these front faces. So we can press Ctrl 3 and face select and just box selecting them. And then just E to extrude it to here. So now we have like a room here. And don't forget to save your file. And let's select a cube again. So Shift A and Mesh and Cube. and you can bring it up and you can make it smaller, and let's change it back to our median point. So press your period key and median point, and we can bring it to here and S and Y to make it longer. And let's go to 7 and G and Y so we can match it to here. And here you see it is the same object, so we can match it to this one as well. And let's make it a bit wider on the x-axis, so S and X to about here, and S and Z to make it a bit more narrow like this. And let's apply the scale, so Ctrl A and scale, and we can select everything and go to edge select and Ctrl B, and let's give it just one segment like this, and right click shade smooth. And let's bring back the other image, so we can bring this one back. Let's go to 1 on X-ray mode, and now we can just select this cube again, so this one here, and let's move it down so we can match it to here. And let's make it also a bit bigger like this, and let's also copy this object here. So let's go to edit mode and Ctrl R to make a loop cut, and you can make the loop cut to here, so just matching it to this wall here, so double G to move it a bit. And next we can just go to 3, so face select, and we can press Alt and just click this face here, and Shift D and G and Z so we can move it up like this. And now we can just make it on top of the other one, so to about here. And now we can also make this a bit higher, so we can just select the top face and G and Z to move it a bit, so we can match it to this one here. And next we can make one door here, so we can select this cube, and we can also make one loop cut here and one here, so we have a better face. And let's also make one loop cut here, so Ctrl R, and also one here. And let's also make one loop cut here, so we have a better space. And let's go to face select, and we can select these faces here, and maybe also these ones, and I, and right click, loop tools, and circle. And let's also rotate it a bit so it is more straight, so maybe -17. And let's go to face select, and we can just select these faces here, and X and faces. And now we can just go to 1 and select these both faces, and E and Z. And we can hide this cube so we can see better. And let's make one loop cut here, and also one here. And we can select this one, and lastly the other one, and press M and at last, and again on the other side. And let's go to edge select, and we can select this edge and just pressing F to fill it, and also here. And we can bring back our cube, and now we can just select these edges here, and we can just extrude it, so E to extrude, and G and Y so it is straight. We can make it as long as you want, I think this is fine. And go to face and grid fill, and now we have a perfect face. And we can come back, and we can also make this longer, so we have a ground here. So let's go to toggle view by pressing slash, and we can go to 3 and just select these faces here, so just these ones here. And we can go to 1 and selecting them, and now we can just grab it, so we can go to here and G and Y, and we can bring it to about here. And now we also have a ground, and now we can also bring it a bit more in the center, so we can just grab this and G and X to move it more in the center, so it looks a bit better. And once we have that, we can move on, and let's add a holding bar, so we can Shift S and cursor to selected, and Shift A and curve, and let's add a path and RZ90, and let's bring it up and make it longer. And let's go to this curve properties, and we can go to geometry and bevel, and we can make it a bit bigger, so you can give it some thickness, and we can move it to here. So maybe not this thick, so maybe 0.02. And we can go to 7 and we can just align it better like this. Once we have that, we can make Shift S cursor to select it. And we can select another curve and path and R, Y and 90. And let's make it smaller. And we can bring it to here. And we can do the same thing. So we can come here and bevel and make it a bit bigger. So maybe a 0.14. And once we have that, we can bring it to about here. And we can go to our modifiers and add a array modifier. And let's make this X factor to 0 and the Y to 1. And let's hold the Shift key and we can just grab this and make it to maybe something about this. And we can make the count a bit up, maybe to about here. And now what we can do, we can just select these ones and this. And Shift D and let's go to 7 and let's move it to the side. And we can also copy one more time and R, Z and 90. And let's go to 7 and we can bring it to this side here. And let's bring it also down. So G and Z and we can bring it to here. And we can align it. And if you don't see it really good, you can go up here and turn on your cavity. And now you can see it a bit better. And G and Y, so we can move it to here. And also we have to align it a bit. So let's align it. And you can also select this and make it longer. So we can select this vertex here and G and X to move it about here. And we can also align these ones. So let's move it a bit on the X-axis. So we can select our building and let's go to 1. And let's make these balconies and we can see where it is, so maybe here. And let's go to 1 and we can select a couple of edges. So maybe 7 and the height is enough, so we can just select 7. And we can select these ones and right click and mark seam. And also the other ones, so we can maybe make 2 in between. And do the same thing. So let's click one edge and Control Shift and the other one and right click and mark seam. I think it is better if there are 3 faces in between, so you can just select these edges and mark seam again. And then you can just select these ones and right click and clear seam. And now we can just make one more here. And these ones and clear seam. And now we have these balconies like this. And now let's go to our vertex select. So let's select these vertices here. And we can now just bevel them, so Ctrl B. And now we see nothing happens, so we have to press V. So we can bevel the vertices. And now we can just maybe make one segment, so we can just scroll with your mouse wheel. And once we have that, we can just select our faces. So let's go to face select and do 1. And we can select one face in the corner and Ctrl Shift in the other ones. And make sure you don't have selected other faces on the ground, for example. And once you have selected these faces, we can just extrude them. So E to extrude, or you can just fit it to the reference image. And now what we can do, we can just make one loop cut here and Ctrl B. And also here, so we can make one loop cut here and Ctrl B. So once we have that, we can just go to 3 and we can select these faces by holding Alt and click on Edge here. Alt and E and extrude faces along normals. And let's separate the ground from the walls so that we don't have any issues later. So if we select these faces and extrude it inwards, then we have an issue here. So let's go to Ctrl 7 and we have the under of the building. And now we can just select all of these faces here from the ground, but not these ones here. So let's deselect these ones and let's go to X-ray mode so we can see if we don't have select any false faces, just the ones here. So just press P and selection. And now we just have this face here separated and we can name it ground. And let's click this walls again and go to our edit mode. And we can come to face select and just selecting these faces. And once we have that, we can just Alt and E and extrude faces along normals. And we can just bring it to about here. We have to be careful so that these are not intersecting. And once we have that, we can just add a bevel. So let's go to modifiers and search for bevel. And let's make 2 segments. And also let's make it much smaller. And we can see it better if you go to the store here. So let's make it to a 0.015 and 2 segments. We can also give it 3 segments, but I think 2 is enough. And once we have that, we can also add a subdivision, so Ctrl 2 to add a subdivision, or you can go up here and just search it and right click and shade smooth. And as you can see, it doesn't look this great here. So let's just go to this geometry and change the meter outer to arc. And now it looks much better. So now we can just make the steps. So let's select this walls. And let's go to edit mode and edge select, and we can select one edge here and Ctrl Shift and this one and Shift D and P selection. And now we just have this edge and we can name it steps. And let's select everything and E and X to move it to about here. And let's make one loop cut also here so we have cleaner edges. So we can make 2 segments, and let's select these edges on the front, and again let's Shift D and P selection. And now we have the steps here, and we can go to edit mode again and select everything and E and X. So we can make some steps like this and E and Z. And now we can add a array modifier. So let's make an array, and we can make the Z to -1, and let's increase the number until it is coming to this ground here. So maybe 10 is enough. We can also make it a bit smaller, so we can select this edge here by holding Alt and cursor selected, and change the period to 3D cursor and select everything and S and X. And let's go to toggle view by pressing / and we can just come here to these edges and we can select them, and also here, and we can press N, so we have this menu here. And let's go to item, and here you have the mean increase, so we can just increase it, and now it is sharper and looks much better. We can come back, and we can also make this sharper as well, and right click, shade smooth, so we can come to this bevel here and we can make it a bit smaller, maybe a 0.008. And I also think these steps are too high, so we can bring it down, so we can select this one and also the steps and G and Z to make it smaller. So maybe something about this is enough, and we can decrease the steps, so to just something like a 5. And let's make the door here, so we can just select the walls, and let's make one loop cut in the middle like this, and also one here and one here, and we can make 2 more like this. And now we can just select the face and eye, and right click, loop tools and circle, and we can make this 0 so it is straight, and we can select these faces here and also these ones and X and faces, and we can come to 1 and select these both vertices and E and just matching it to the other ones. And we also have to add 1 more here and 1 more on this side, and select this one and lastly the other one and M and add last and here as well. And let's go to 2, so edge select, and we can select this edge and just holding F to fill it, so just this edge and F. And now we can just select this whole edge by holding Alt and E and X, and we can come here to this face and grid fill, and now we have a perfect face. And if it doesn't fit, we have to go down here and change the numbers, and we have to also match this ground here, so we can just select these faces here. And what we also have to do, we have to select these edges here, so this whole edge, and let's go to here, and we can select this one, this object, and we can go to 3 and Shift S and cursor selected, and change your period to a 3D cursor, and we can select this again and S, C and 0, and now the ground is perfectly fit to this other one. And now we can add the water, so we can just select this ground and you can Shift D and just copy it. And now we can just bring it up, so G and Z, and bring it to about here. And we can name this water. And now we can also add some plastic chairs, so we can come here to File and Import and OBJ, so Wavefront and OBJ. And then you have to search for your chair, so the link is in the description below. And you have to choose the one which says OBJ. And then we can just move it around and you can bring it in place. And make sure that it is not going to the ground, so maybe something like this. And then we can also rotate it on the Z-axis, so just R and Z. And now we can just copy it, so Shift D, and we can bring it, and we can just bring it to here. And what we forgot to add, we have to copy these ones, so Shift D and RZ90. And we have to bring it also to these balconies here, so we can just select it. And we can just select the face, so Shift S, cursor selected, and then these ones, and Shift S and selection to cursor. And now it is much easier, so we can just bring it a bit up into the x-axis, so something like this. And also copy it and rotate it on the z-axis. And we also forgot to make one door here, so we can go to edit mode and we can add some loop cuts. So let's add maybe 8 loop cuts here and also 8 here, so we can see the number up here in this corner. And let's also make maybe 3 here. And let's also add one here, so 3 on this side as well. And we can go to face select and select the face, so something like this, or maybe even a bit bigger. And right click and loop tools and circle. And let's also make one loop cut in the middle, so that is straight. And let's just select these faces here with our C select, so something like this, and also maybe these ones. And X and faces, and we can go to our vertex select and we can just select one vertex in the middle and Shift S, cursor selected, and change your period back to your 3D cursor. And then we can select all of these ones here and S, Y and 0, and now it is straight, and also the same on the other one, so Shift S, cursor selected, and we can select all of these ones and S, Y and 0. And we can also make the same with these ones down here, so let's make the same, and S, Y, 0, and also this one. And once we have that, we can just select this whole edge here, and we can come to the side, and then E to extrude it, and X. And let's change it back to our median point, and S, X, and 0. And now it is straight here, and we can come back to this face, and grid fill. And now we have to tweak these numbers a bit until it fits. So mine is set to 4 and the offset is also set to 4. We can also copy this chair and move this down here, so maybe something like this. And let's also add a camera, so we can add a camera here, so press Shift and right click and you can move your cursor, and Shift A, and let's add a camera. And let's move it on the Z-axis and make it smaller. And we forgot to add a ceiling and the lights, and we can select this edge and Shift S, cursor selected. And now we can just Shift A and add a plane, and we can scale it up and just match it. So S and X to make it bigger. And let's bring it a bit down. And once we have that, we can make some lights, so we can just subdivide it in the middle. And now we have these two faces, so we can select both and press I and I again. And don't forget to apply the scale, so Shift A and scale. And let's select these both faces and press I double. And we can just make them a bit smaller. And let's also extrude it, so we can extrude the ceiling a bit so it has some thickness. And we can also separate these faces, so we can just select them and P and selection. And we have these faces here. And we can rename them by pressing F2 and name them lights. And let's go to 0 to our camera view, and we can open a new window. And let's change this to our shader editor, and N to hide this menu, and we can drag one window here, and T to hide this menu and also the overlays. And we can change this here, and also don't forget to save your file. And we can also change the same here, and we can even go to rendered view on this one. And let's do our lights, so we can select these both and new, and let's name it light. And we can come to this principal shader and X to delete it, and Shift A and add a emission. And we can connect it to the surface. And now you see we have some light here. And now we can also make it brighter, so we can make it something like a 2 or even maybe a 2.5. And once we have that, we can also add some HDRI. So we can come here in environment texture, and we can select these ones here, so the grabbing power, and new, and let's name it metal. Bring the roughness to something 0.2, and let's bring the metallic all the way up. And we can make it easy, so we can just select all of these curves here by holding Ctrl and Shift and selecting all of them. And lastly, select the one with the material by pressing Shift and click it, and Ctrl L and link materials. And now everything has the same material applied. And we can also make it a bit more darker. So let's select the walls and new, and let's name it tiles. And for that, don't forget your node wrangler, so you have to go here to edit and preferences, and go to the add-ons and search for node wrangler. And once we have that, we can click this node and Ctrl Shift and T by holding A and select everything that's in your folder. And as you can see, we have the tiles here and it looks very off, so you can check the face orientation. So let's go up here and face orientation. And as you can see, it is not correct, so you have to change that. So let's select everything and Shift N. And if it doesn't change, you have to come here and check inside. And also the same with the water, so let's check it. And the steps as well, so select everything and Shift N and inside. And also this one here, and also this one. And let's go back to 0, and we can come out of this face orientation. And now you see it is way too big, so we have to make it smaller. So let's make this to something like a 10. And the bump is also way too high, so we have to change that. So let's make the scale to something like a 0.01. And now it looks much better. And some of these parts look not right, so we have to change it. And we can just select the walls, and let's go to edit mode and select everything by pressing A and U, unwrap. And again U and cube projection. And don't forget to apply the scale, so Ctrl A and scale. Also apply it to these ones here. So we can select this one and also these ones here. And also the steps. And this one. And lastly the walls. And don't forget to select the ground as well. And once we have that, we can come to 0 and select the wall and Ctrl L and link materials. And what we can do to see it better, we can come to this. We can come to these lights, and we can come here to the object properties, and let's go to viewport display and change the texture to bounce. And now we can see it much better. So we can select this one here, and we can also make the strength a bit down so we can see it better. And select everything and U, unwrap and cube projection. And don't forget to apply the scale. And U, unwrap and cube projection. If you don't apply the scale, it can look very off, so don't forget it. And also here. So Ctrl A and scale and select everything and unwrap and cube projection. And here you see it doesn't look right, so it looks very weird. So we have to make some loop cuts. So let's make one loop cut here and Ctrl B. And you can scroll up with your mouse wheel a couple of times. And once we have that, we can come to our toggle view by pressing slash, and we can make some seams. Or what we can do, we can come to select and select sharp edges. And now every edge is selected, and we can just right click and mark seam. And we can select everything, and let's go to our UV editor, so here. And let's go to toggle view again, and we can come to this material preview here. So let's select everything and U, unwrap. And now everything is unwrapped perfectly and it looks much better. And let's go back, and we can make the same process with the other one. So we can come here to this other object and slash for toggle view. We can go to edit mode and edge select, and let's go to select and select sharp edges and right click and mark seam. And let's select everything and U and unwrap. And now everything is unwrapped as well. And let's go back. And we can also make the same with the other ones, but I think this looks okay. And let's also add some loop cuts here, so it doesn't look this weird. So we can make just a bunch of loop cuts by pressing Ctrl R and click it. And now it looks much better. So let's go back to the layout and we can come back. And once we have that, we can make some minor adjustments. So we can come down here and we can change this to a 0.001. So it doesn't look this bumpy. And this looks much better. And you can also make these ones a bit bigger if you want. So we can just copy this material by pressing this icon here. And we can also make this bigger. So we can reduce the number by 5 or maybe a 6. And you can roughly match it to these other ones. And if you want to match it perfectly, we can also go to UV editing. So you can come to this object and here you can reduce the strength a bit. And let's just go to face select and we can select one face by pressing L. And then we have just these faces here selected. So these front faces. And now we can just match them a bit. So we can just move it a bit around. Maybe to something like this. And we can slightly scale it until it fits. And now it fits perfectly to the other walls. And we can come back to layout. And we can do the same with the other one. So we can select it and select the tiles 001. And now we can also match it. So let's go to UV editing. And let's go to face select and pressing L. And then we have just this front face. And we can match this a bit. So let's select these as well by pressing A and G. And we can make it bigger or smaller. So something like this. And let's go back to layout and we can see how everything looks. And let's also give this a bit more subdivision. So we can give this like 3 loop cuts. And now it looks much better. And also here. So let's give this like 3. And let's do this object. So we can select it and select everything and do unwrap and cube projection. And also the steps. And once we have that, we can make the water. So we can select the water and new and let's emit water. Delete this principled shader and we can add a glass and connect it to the surface and also a transparent and let's connect it to the volume. And we can add a bump and connect the normal to the normal of the glass and a noise. And connect the noise, the color into the height. And don't forget to apply your scale. And once we have that, we can change the IRR to 1.333. And we can also make some color. So a slight blue color like this. And let's also fix this. So you can see it doesn't look right. So let's select everything and do unwrap and cube projection. And now it looks much better. And let's also check the face orientation. And as you can see, it is not correct. So let's select everything and Shift N. And come to this box and check inside. And we can also give some loop cuts here so the texture looks not so off. And maybe one more. And we can bring the water back, so let's bring it back. And what we can do next, we can make some changes. So we can bring the strength to something like 0.3. And we can also make it a bit more. And we can make the water maybe a bit higher, so G and Z to move it a bit up. So you have more water. And you can also give it some distortion if you want. So just a little bit. And next we can also change this to 4D so we can animate it later on this W. And I think the water has a bit too much color, so we can bring the saturation a bit down. Maybe just a 0.3. And now we can also make the lights a bit more yellow. So we can select the lights. And we can make this a bit colored. So just a slight color, so you can hold shift. And now we have like a warmer color like this. And also let's not forget the ceiling and also this object here. So we can select it and Ctrl A and scale. And let's select everything and do unwrap and cube projection. And also the ceiling, so let's select the ceiling and apply the tiles. And select everything and unwrap and cube projection. And once we have everything, we can just animate the camera. So you can either leave it at this ratio or you can change it here, 1080 by 1920. And then you have it like this. And Ctrl B, so you have just this frame here. And now we can just animate the camera, so you can come down here and change it to your timeline. And N to hide this menu. And we can make 120 frames. And now we can just go to 7 and let's go back. And we can select our camera and we can come to this X-ray mode to see it, and we can move it into this tunnel. So maybe something about this, and also R and Y, so it is more straight. And if you don't want the tiles to be this shiny, you can also change it. So let's go back to shading editor, and we can change the roughness. So we can just unplug this, and we can make the roughness like a 0.5 or maybe a 0.4. And don't forget the other one as well, so this one as well. And maybe the light is too much, so we can also change that. So we can make it a 2, and now it looks much better. And we can select our camera, and we can start at frame 0. And now we can just add some keyframes, so we can make this maybe to here. And we can animate that it's going out of this tunnel, so we can come to this object properties, and the location we can set a eye, so we can set a keyframe. And now we can move it like maybe 15 frames, and we can move it to here. So let's make the location first, so I. And now we can also set a rotation, so R and Z. So let's go to 0, and we can set a rotation to I. And now we can make a rotation here. So let's rotate it on the Z-axis to maybe about this. And press I to set a keyframe. And we can come more out of this tunnel. And right click and replace keyframes. And now we can also play it so we can see how it looks. So just press spacebar. And as you can see, it is too fast. And let's also change it to Bezier. So pressing T and Bezier. So we can just drag these both. So we can drag it to maybe about here, to frame 25. And we can play it again. And it is too fast, so we can bring it to here. And also the rotation. Let's bring it to frame 50. And once we have that, we can bring it a bit more to this side here. And let's bring it to frame 60 maybe, so it is not too fast. And then we can make another rotation. So we can come to frame 100 maybe, and R and Z, and we can just rotate it to maybe something about this. So it looks like we are looking around. And also a bit down. So let's rotate it also a bit on the x-axis like this. And I to set a keyframe. And let's play and see how it looks. And you can also make it longer, so you can make it to 150. So we have more time and also to play more around what we can do. And once we look down, we can also make it look more around to maybe to this direction. And let's make eye. We have to make the normal, so we can check it here. And let's go to this gizmo here and change it to normal. And now we can also rotate it on the x-axis, so R and X. So we can make it look up to the store. And also let's rotate it to more about here. And I again to set a keyframe. And as you can see, it was way too fast, so we can make these a bit more to this side. And let's change it to this view so you can see it much better. So it goes to here, and then looking down and around and also up, and I think like this looks fine. And I have this add-on for the camera, so it's called Camera Shakify, and it is a free add-on, so you can just download it. So you can just search for Camera Shakify and Blender add-on, and once you have that, you can select the camera and go to this plus. And if you press play, you see it is too strong, and we can make the influence a bit bigger, but just the scale we can make this smaller. You just have to play around until you find something that you're happy with. And here you can also change it, so investigation or close-up, wedding. And what I do, I always leave it at investigation. I think it is the best. And here you can also make the speed, so you can make it faster or also like slower. So you can see it is very shaky, so you can just leave it maybe at 1. And then it looks much more natural, like someone is holding the camera. And you can also make the light a bit more yellow, so you can come here and you can make this more saturated. And now we can also animate the water, so we can come here to this noise. And let's go to our timeline as well. So we can come here and open a new window, and we can change it to our timeline. And you can press N to hide this menu. And now we can go to our 0 and let's go out of camera view so we can see it better. And now we can just make a keyframe. So we can come to this noise texture and to this W, and we can just press I, and you have one keyframe at frame 0. And now we can just go to the last frame and make a small number. So just moving a bit to maybe 140 and I again. And now if we play it, we have an animation. And let's also change it to linear, so T and linear. So once you're happy with everything, we can come to this render settings. So we can come here and we can change it to the samples to 300. I think this is enough. And for the rest, you can come to performance and also check persistent data and all of the other ones. And for the color management, I have set it to AGX and very high contrast. You can also do it in post-processing. And let's go to the output properties, 30 frames per second and 150 frames long. And then we can come here to this output, and you can either change PNG or you can change FFmpeg. I would recommend you choosing PNG because it is much safer, and if your Blender crashes, then the PNGs are saved. And if the Blender crashes, the FFmpeg video is not saved, you can't use it anymore. So let's change it back to PNG. So I would recommend you make an extra folder where you can save all the PNGs. And once you have set everything, we can just come here to this render and render animation. And once your render is finished, you can open a new window and you can come to this video editing. And now we can come to this add and add your image sequence, and you can add your folder. If your folder opens, you can just select everything by pressing A and bring all the PNGs in. And once you have all your PNGs in, all you have to do is just use another folder. You have to make it FFmpeg. And don't forget to change your frames, so this should be 0 and the other one to 150. And then you just have to go here to render and render animation. And that's it for this tutorial. I hope you could learn something new, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I see you in the next tutorial. Bye!